I'm John Parkington. The course is going to be given by Vincent Hare, but he's away, he's in Europe at the moment. Can you hear me, by the way? Is this okay? Thank you. He's in Europe at some conferences, so he asked me if I would sit in and go through the first 2 weeks of his presentation. So they're his presentation, it's his course, and I'm going to talk about his presentation. You've got his presentation on Amatuba. I think you've got his commentary, in fact, on the presentation available to you there. Is that right? And so my commentary can be seen as expanding. And the reason that might be valuable is that, of course, archaeology is a very, very variable thing. Can I presume that this is your first kind of contact with archaeology? Would that be not right? Archaeology is very, very variable. So yes, we are going to define it in the next few days. We're going to talk about what archaeology is, what materials archaeology has available. But the answer to those questions, if they are questions, might be quite different from one archaeologist to another. Vincent, for instance, is a scientist. Vincent majored in physics and archaeology here at UCD. So his vision of archaeology is very much from the perspective of a scientist. I was, at school I was a classicist. I did Latin and Greek and ancient. So I couldn't really be further away from Vincent and still be in archaeology. So my vision of it is a little bit different. I've been through his presentation. Obviously I agree with almost everything he says, but some of my emphases might be a bit different. So it might be valuable to have my comments as well as his. There are one or two things that I've seen on his presentation that I'm not sure I completely understand. So we'll make a note of those when we get to them. And you can remember to ask him about those things, because he obviously knows exactly what he means and I might not. The idea of this course is to introduce you to what archaeology is and what archaeologists do and what they don't do. I see he starts out with some comments on what isn't archaeology. Probably useful. And to give you an idea of what kinds of stuff archaeologists have access to that they can use to do what they want to do. Archaeology is about the past. So we're not an experimental science in the sense we can't visit the past. We can only visit things in the present that have survived from the past. So we actually study the present, of course. What else could we do? The present even is a bit of a difficult concept, because by the time I finish this sentence, you know the story, that's the past. So it's a bit of a slippery eel, but we basically are interested in what the past was like and how we can reconstruct it, how we can understand it, and how we can integrate it with what we experience in the present, and maybe even think a little bit about how it impacts or has some effect on what might be going to happen in the future, which has already started. We can tie ourselves up in knots and try not to do that. So Vincent calls the course the human planet, prehistory to present. And I've got to start out by saying a few things about some of the words that are on the screen now. Right? What's prehistory? I understand what Vincent means by anthropogeny, not a word I use very much, but what he means here is an introduction to the discipline of archaeology and the origins of people, right? So he would see this as human evolution. How did we become us? Who were we before we were us? So that's what he means by anthropology. Prehistory is another aspect of this. History is, in a narrow sense, history is the study of the past through written records, right? So first of all, we have oral history. Okay? We have our understanding of the very recent past, because we can talk to people who were there. You can talk to your grandparents about things. You can talk to your parents, and by their oral testimony, if you like, you can understand something of the past. Of course, they might be telling you lies. They might not be remembering correctly, right? And it only goes back so far. You only have so many ancestors to talk to. You know? So you can't get back very far with oral history. Before that, we have written history, okay? Because if you want to know something, let's say you wanted to know what was happening here in Table Bay when Van Riebeck arrived. Nobody was there. You can't get any oral history about that. But there are written documents about what was going on then. They are even more likely than your grandparents and your parents to be biased, right? First of all, most of the people who were involved in those meetings in 1650, whatever it was, were not writing anything down themselves. Some of those people were writing something down, and some of those people were being written about, but were not writing anything down. All kinds of opportunities for things being wrong, or being biased, or just not being there. Right? Now, written documents. Who's going to tell me when's the earliest written document? 500 years ago? More? 5,000 years ago? Sorry? Yeah, somewhere in Mesopotamia, you might have, or in Egypt, you might have something that's 4,000 or 5,000 years old. Apart from the Epic of Gilgamesh, when you look at those documents, they're very, very, very boring. I mean, they're counts of the number of sheep somebody owns, or the tons of grain that they got this year, or how much tax they're having to pay. It's quite dull material that's written down, say 5,000 years ago, and it's not going to tell you very much about what was happening at the time, and it may well not tell you the kinds of things you want to know. But more important, it's only 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 years back into the past, which is nothing. You know, we've had people, our ancestors, here in the Cape area for more than 1 million years. In other parts of Africa for more than 3 million years. So, you know, written documentation just scratches the surface. So what your grandparents can tell you, the kind of oral record that you can get, even the written record that you can get, don't go back very far. If you want to know what was happening before then, or even in other places 500 years ago where there weren't anybody writing, where there wasn't, anybody writing anything down, you're going to have to find another way of knowing about the past, and that's really what archaeology is. It's about the material evidence that you might find that will help you reconstruct, envisage, whatever verb you want to use, what was happening in those times. Now that stuff doesn't tell you any lies. You know, that's stuff that we might dig up. It's not going to tell, but it's not going to tell you anything. It's not actually going to speak to you. It's not actually going to say anything to you. You have to make it say something. So archaeology is about making stuff that you found that is in the present but was manufactured or whatever in the past. Making that stuff tell you something interesting. That's what archaeology is. And so the word prehistory, now we can slot that in there. What do we mean by, and this is a very contentious word, prehistory. Why? Because how can there be anything before history? Well, in the broad sense, there can't be. But if, in the narrow sense, that history is what you can find out about the past from written documentation, then obviously there's a lot of prehistory. There's tons, the majority of our past, vast majority of our past, is prehistory in the sense that we have to work it out from archaeology. We haven't got any written records that tell us what was happening. The contentious nature of that comes from the fact that it is considered by many people to be a dangerous term, because many people, why should people who were not writing anything down be regarded as prehistoric? Which to some people may have a slightly negative connotation, whereas people who happen to be writing things down were historic. There's a lot of difference of opinion about this. When I started in archaeology, the word prehistory was not contentious at all. Nobody bothered. We all understood that prehistory meant simply the period of the past in whatever part of the world you happen to be looking that was before there were any written records. In the Cape, that might be, say, 1480 or whatever, when people who were writing things down, in this case the Portuguese, sailed past and started writing things down about local people. That was the beginnings of history, if you like, and the end of prehistory. And whereas in Egypt or in Mesopotamia or whatever, that boundary between prehistory and history was much earlier, because people started writing a lot earlier. So for one reason or another, and rightly or wrongly, and you can form your own opinion about this, I have a bit of difficulty being negative about the word prehistory. To me, but